सिंधुभ्य पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासदि गौरभक्तवृंद। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे, हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। Hare Krishna. So, welcome everyone. So, we'll start with this verse, but we'll go into a discussion after that. So, I'm just reading this from the 7th chapter Gita. Rasoham apsu kaunteya prabhasmi shashi suryayoho pranava sarva vedeshu shabda khe paurusham nrushu. O son of Kunti, I'm the taste of water, the light of the sun and the moon, the syllable Om in the Vedic mantras. I'm the sound in ether, and I'm the ability in man. Okay, so the focus here is, this last line, Paurusham Nrushu. Krishna is saying that he is the ability in man. It's a very big statement if we think about it, right? Because people in this world, everyone has some kind of ability, some kind of power to do something, and Krishna actually appreciates that, right? Krishna is saying that I am that. Um, though generally sometimes people may think that uh, I should not try to show my prowess, or I need not try to showcase whatever my capabilities are. But in the Gita, we see Krishna is kind of very positive about it. Like, I mean, if you just take from the Mahabharata itself, Krishna, when Arjuna, whenever he would fight a good battle, Krishna would actually be very happy. Krishna, even like if you see on the day when Arjuna killed Jayadratha, and when Krishna was bringing Arjuna back to his camp, Krishna was clapping and kind of very joyous, recalling the valorous manner in which Arjuna fought that particular day. Uh, one may think that Arey, Krishna only did everything, right? As in, Krishna only enabled in so many ways that Jayadratha would be killed by trying to show as if the sun has set and all that. But Krishna doesn't take his own task very important. He's very happy to see Arjuna's prowess. Arjuna doing powerful things. So there is one kind of power which people are able to perform with their action, like Arjuna. There is another kind of power that is there, which is philosophical, which is an ability to see things very deeply and come up with very deep thoughts. So we are going to eventually today go into a little bit discussion about various Vaishnava philosophies, etc. But I wish to start with, if you see even the Western philosophers, right? If you see uh, like someone like Frederick Nietzsche, for example, um, even these philosophers who apparently didn't have anything to do with Sanatana Dharma or something, but if you see many of their thoughts, they came up with amazing conclusions. Um, Very amazing conclusions they come up with. We will look at that, and this is also to be seen. So one shouldn't. My point is, when we see anyone in the world, whether he is a devotee, not a devotee, if he is doing something very powerful, then we need to remember this word: "Shabda ke paurusham nrushu." Hmm. That ability of that person to think in a particular way, do things in a particular way, is certainly coming from Krishna. That person may know or not know. That's a different thing, right? But from our perspective, when we look at people doing big things or coming out with great ideas, it is certainly beneficial for us to see that as Krishna's power only. Though in India also we have had obviously many great philosophers, as eventually we will come to talk about Ramanuja, Madhva, Lord Chaitanya, etc. But the difference is in the Western world, these philosophers were there who thought very deeply, but they didn't have samskaras or sadhana. So eventually, many of them became crazy. Like many of them, they did very crazy things, or towards the end of their life, they almost became mad, etc. Mad as in they lost their mental balance. The reason is that philosopher in general means someone who thinks and expands his thinking. And it is said that if you are thinking, you don't translate it to action, or kind of do something about it, that melancholy trait which is there, it eventually leads to madness. Okay, so these people had profound ideas, but unfortunately, eventually, many of them, they they acted in very crazy manner in their own personal life. That's why when we quote these Western philosophers, someone when we look at their life, then one is very disappointed. One feels, "Arey, this person had such amazing thoughts, but in his life, it seems to be a complete failure. It seems a misery actually." These people. So let's still see about some thoughts which these philosophers came up, whether it is Nietzsche, Plato, and so on. And if you see, they are very much aligned with our Sanatana Dharma Shastra. So one may ask, did these people take ideas from our Shastra? May not be necessary, but on the other hand, the other possibility is our Shastra talks about truths which are so universal that any ordinary man or woman also, if he thinks very deeply, he will come to very similar conclusions. That's a more plausible, possible outcome which we can actually accept, right? So, just like for example, if you there's another famous philosopher called Plato. He said something very interesting. He spoke about this. I'm just reading what he says here. He spoke about something called as hero mentality, morality, and herd morality. Hero and herd. So he said herd morality or mob morality means, he said, in that the most important traits are simplicity, accepting whatever is told, humility, not going against the crowd, agreeability, dependency, accepting authority, and so on. So Plato said these are all symptoms of someone who is adhering to a herd, you know. And we also see this, right? Like if you are in an organization or if you are in anything, then there is an expectation that you will conform to certain norms, right? I mean, just imagine, suppose if somebody is staying near our temple, NVCC also, if you see, then it's. I mean, I'm not saying that somebody has to do something different, but it is very difficult if you are staying just near the temple and to do something different from the crowd over there, because that entire herd is thinking in one way only. It's a good way, but everybody is doing one thing only. So for you to sit there and do something else doesn't become that easy, correct? Because that's what herd morality is. In the herd, you have to do things which are acceptable to all. You can't do something out of order. You can never do that. People will ask, why are you doing this? Nobody is doing the way you are doing, and so on. So like that. On the other hand, there is something called hero morality, which Plato says, which means to stand out of the crowd. And he said, if you do that, you will get attacked. Okay. But eventually, if you stand out of the crowd and try something different, and you come up with your own idea and your own ability, your own uniqueness, then you will stand out a lot in life. So since currently that Chava movie has become very famous, right? Everyone is talking about it, Sambhaji Maharaj. So if you basically see Shivaji Maharaj or the Marathas, if you see their greatness was that they stood out of the crowd, right? They went for hero morality. Herd morality was very easy to practice for Shivaji Maharaj and the Marathas. Right? I mean, they were all under the subjugation of the Adil Shahi, and they could, just like their father was also part of that whole system, they could continue the same thing without challenging the existing system, right? They could have just continued like that, and they could have led quite successful lives also, what they say. But they did not do that, right? So they stood out. They came out of it, and Jijabai, his mother, was the first to rebel, and she instilled that in her son Shivaji Maharaj, and then subsequently his sons, whether it is Sambhaji or even Raja Ram and so on. And in this way, an empire came up, right? And it's a fact that today all of us are, for example, sitting in Pune and practicing dharma because of these people only. Otherwise, as many people say, everybody would have got converted, right, by now. This place wouldn't exist the way it is. Because ultimately the Marathas who ensured that Aurangzeb is brought down to his knees. And the Mughal Empire started collapsing from that point only. Right? So we owe so much to these people. But these people went against the herd and tried to do something different. And Plato talks about it. So I'm just going back saying, see, these philosophers, they speak about ideas which are very, very powerful, if you see, right? Which are actually implemented. Even if you see if you see the Pandavas, in the Mahabharata, it is said till Krishna came into their life, they did not achieve much, right? They did not achieve much in life. They were just, Vidura was only as an advisor playing safe, trying to protect their life in Lakshagriha and all that. Vidura ensured that the Pandavas are not burnt due to the evil intentions of Duryodhan and so on. That much Vidura was doing. But he was not giving anything positive ideas in their life, how to go ahead. So if you see all the later things, whether it is the Indraprastha, developing that Khandava Prastha into Indraprastha, and then onwards, everything, Arjuna's marriage with Subhadra, all things where there was some positivity, where coming out and doing something, it was Krishna who ensured that the Pandavas come out of that shell. And otherwise, they would have just, kind of, they didn't have that kind of counsel from Vidura earlier, right? So the thing is, yeah, so these philosophers, I'm just saying that they come up with ideas which are very powerful. Mhm. Even though they may have not had the samskaras. Yeah, so let's go back to some other things. So let's look at something that Nietzsche says, for example, right? He says here, this is related to marriage. He says love, Nietzsche, this Friedrich Nietzsche, the German philosopher. He says love and intelligence doesn't go together. So he would say that when a man and woman fall in love, better don't allow them to marry since there is no intelligence. It is just love over there. Intelligence is not working. So their marriage would not perhaps be so successful. He says like that. And it is very interesting. Prabhupada, in one context, he writes that Gandharva Vivaha, which is what we call as love marriage nowadays, is only for Kshatriyas, Prabhupada says. And there is a statement where he says Gandharva Vivaha is only for Kshatriyas who knew how to love. That means in their love also, there was a judiciousness, some thoughtfulness, right? So it is said that the eight type of Vivaha which is there, this Gandharva Vivaha which is there, which is marriage by choice, this was only for Kshatriyas. For the others, it wasn't by and large so much recommended, it is said. Okay. And Nietzsche says all these points. So, Nietzsche, for example, says marriage, the purpose of marriage is to make better class of citizens more refined, to find a good quality breed. These are some things which are very, very core to our Sanatan Dharma characteristic, right? We also talk about it. Marriage is to basically have good offspring, train them well, and to make them better, to make a next generation which contributes better to the society, to the world, and so on. Correct? So I'm just saying that, these people, these thoughtful people, they came up with ideas which all actually which resonate with our shastra. Many of it. It's not just one or two like this. If you read the writings, right, several of it is like that. Right. In fact, Nietzsche also would say that democracy is a flattery of the ordinary. He said it will not use people of talent. Those who are capable, he says, they will find it very difficult to survive in such systems. Many thoughts like that he would speak about. Again, if you see the Mahabharata also, like Arjuna, he was so capable, correct? But somehow or the other, it was Duryodhan and all his powers only which were ruling over Hastinapur. And Krishna really had to push hard to ensure that the Pandavas take over and come up and take over. Otherwise, there was a lot of reluctance in there, right? Arjuna was reluctant to fight. After the war was over, Yudhishthir Maharaj was reluctant to take over the kingdom. He felt that I have done so many mistakes. We see in Bhagavatam also, right? First canto, chapter 9. So whether you see the Gita or the Bhagavatam, good people sometimes they have to be really pushed a lot to achieve something, right? Because they feel that okay, these people are doing, let them do. Let's why to get into it. Okay, so in this way, if you see many of the thoughts of people which were of ordinary philosophers also, uh, very much resonate with our Shastric teachings. The purpose to say this is that Paurusham Nrishu, right? As we are reading in the Gita here, that ability in man which is there comes out in various ways, and one has to appreciate it. One cannot simply reject it and say that such and such person he is quote unquote not connected to dharma or something. So, or dharma as in he is not connected to Sanatana Dharma in a very formal way. So none of his contribution would be meaningful. No, it is never like that. Right? So this is how a devotee as such we see things from the scriptures. Right. So coming more into the Gita, right now let's I mean from this was one point I wanted to start with, but let's come more into the Bhagavad Gita itself. If you see the Gita also, right, Krishna, if you see the way he has spoken about the yoga system also, correct? He has spoken about the yoga system in a way that one has to adhere to that yoga system without actually violating the norm, without trying to unnecessarily speed up. For example, the sixth chapter Gita, there is one verse in the yoga system where Krishna says, Shane Shane Uparame. Devotees may recall that verse. Shane Shane means gradually. Okay, so it says that verse basically says in the Bhagavad Gita, gradually one is supposed to progress on the path of yoga, kshane kshane, like that. So basically, the Gita sometimes there is an author who says that progress in yoga, whether it is bhakti yoga or any yoga, it is like water coming in a cloud. Okay, the water that comes in a cloud comes very slowly and gradually. It doesn't happen that just because we want rain, suddenly the cloud can get formed. No, it is a very gradual process. Right? So similarly, our advancement in yoga also is very gradual. And one cannot violate any law of nature and think that I need a very high speed advancement. It doesn't happen actually, right? In fact, most of the time it can boomerang. So there was one philosopher I heard, Bhai Shastri, is like a the well-wisher of the devotees, etc. So he gave a class in Chopati recently. He gave a nice example actually. He said, suppose you have a car. He said, and the car is supposed to drive you from one place to another. He said you have to follow the prescriptions of the manufacturer, right? If the manufacturer of the car has said that diesel has to be put, then diesel only has to be put. You can't put petrol. Correct. If you follow the rules of the car, then the car will help you. If you don't follow the rules of the car and you say, I want to drive very fast and very rash, and I will not follow the way actually the car should be driven, which speed, which gear, and so on. Eventually, he said, you will have to carry the car to the garage. So instead of the car carrying you from one place to another, you will be forced to carry the car and go from your house to the garage to get it repaired. So his point was that the body and the mind which is there is like the car. And when we are operating it in this world, even in our yoga, that means bhakti yoga or whichever yoga system, one has to follow whatever rules are there for the body and mind. Right? If we don't follow the rules, then it will crash out. And then instead of helping us, it will become a botheration. Correct? It will become a botheration. Okay. So Satya Darshana, which is there, it is something where one has to be very patient also to obtain Satya Darshan. Satya Darshan means the truth. We all want to understand the truth, but to understand the truth, one has to be very patient as well. One has to progress on the path daily, monthly, yearly, every decade, sometimes perhaps every lifetime as well. One has to keep investing in it. Only then one will go ahead. Coming back to another thing, another famous philosopher said, Socrates, he says this, truth or Satya has many manifestations. Without experiencing those manifestations, one can never understand them. So basically that means Satya which is there now, it has a particular manifestation as in, so like if you see various philosophies, like if you see Advaita, vishistadvaita, Dvaita, etc., these philosophies which are there now, they are not just philosophy in the sense of just some content which is debated or discussed. Rather, these are thought processes which people have ingrained in their life as a samskar, as a way of living, and uh, and they have in that way realized it as well. So, in fact, it is said that a very deep person, when he suppose if somebody is very deep in his own philosophy, when he hears another philosophical path, then he will be inspired and impressed, but still he continues to practice what he is doing. Okay, so we will take one example for this. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there is the story of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu meeting Prakashananda Saraswati in Varanasi. Right? We all know that story. And it is said that Prakashananda Saraswati, when he heard from Lord Chaitanya about Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's Achintya Veda Veda philosophy, in contrast to his own Shankara's Advaita philosophy, it is said that Prakashananda Saraswati was very, very moved. He was certainly very inspired, he was very impressed, and so on. But eventually, there is a line in CC where Prakashananda Saraswati tell Lord Chaitanya that it is our party policy. So he says that I accept whatever you say, I understand where you are coming from, but since it is our party policy, we continue to do what Shankaracharya has taught us. Like that he says. And Mahaprabhu also accepts that particular point. It's a very significant statement if you think about it very deeply. That Prakashananda Saraswati heard from Lord Chaitanya, but he himself was very deep in his own Advaita philosophy, that is Prakashananda Saraswati. And despite hearing, he tells that yes, and he adds basically something on to his own practice as well, because the holy names and chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra which Chaitanya Mahaprabhu taught him, he certainly was very impressed by that, and he liked that particular aspect of spirituality. But he says, I will continue to do what Shankaracharya, by and large, taught us that path. I'm not going to leave that. He says like that. Okay. So when we read such a statement in CC also, we shouldn't think that, Arey, kya yaar, despite being hearing from Lord Chaitanya, this person doesn't change. He's still doing what he's, whatever parampara is coming from and so on. No, we shouldn't feel like that. Rather, we should understand that no, this person was very mature, as in he was quite thoughtful, very deep in his own system. And he learned to reconcile between his thought process and add whatever he could learn from Lord Chaitanya's teachings to his own teachings and then continue. Correct. So just like I was hearing this that one American lady, she follows a path of some guru like this. Like in Maharaj's journey home, there are, Maharaj speaks, right, in 1970, he met many gurus in Vrindavan, this Neem Karoli Baba and all that. Right. Now, one of them had a disciple, Neem Karoli Baba. She's an American lady. So for 40 years, she is practicing that path only. So it seems very recently she read the book Journey Home. Correct. Now just try to picturize this and imagine. Someone for 40 years is following a path of some spirituality under some Vrindavan guru or whatever, some sampradaya. And that person gets journey home and they read it. Correct. And it is said that this lady, so much she liked the book that she read the entire book in one day, non-stop. That means she started reading the book, she could not keep it down. So it is said that she just read the book cover to cover. Okay. Now, when this happens, what do we expect her to do? Correct. So some devotee may say we would expect that she should give up her path and come here, kind of give up whatever guru she had and just follow whatever we are teaching. But that, if you see, is a little superficial because that lady was already in a system for 40, 50 years. And obviously, she would have got very deep into it. And she was already having some sadhana which she was practicing. Right? Now, for her to see this whole idea, that a person will just completely give up whatever they were doing, it means that that person is very superficial. How can you practice something for 40, 50 years without thinking very deeply about it? Right? So she has been practicing means that she has thought very deeply about that path and certainly she has benefited something in that path also. She has got some spiritual advancement, genuine. But now when she reads, Maharaj's journey, she basically is inspired in her own path. Of course, she gets attached to the chanting of the holy name, certainly, but she continues her own path with great rigor, right? With great vigor and enthusiasm, and that's exactly what happens. Okay, so this woman met the devotees as well, but she said that I'm obviously continuing. Because 40, 50 years I'm following a particular guru, correct? So it's not that I will just suddenly overnight, kind of give that path up like that. So just like we were talking about Prakashan and the Saraswati, right? Now coming to the formal sampradayas, right? Like so, if you see in Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada talks in one place about what he calls as Matatraya Acharya. Matatraya Acharya means the three Acharyas, the three matas. Right? So prominently there are three matas, okay, and especially South India, and by and large, that is what is spread everywhere in various forms, etc. So one is Dvaita, one is Advaita, and one is vishistadvaita. So all these three, and the acharyas who represented them, Shankaracharya Advaita, Madhvacharya Advaita, and Ramanuja Vishistadvaita. All these three wrote commentaries on Vedanta Sutra themselves, and they established their mata, their opinion, their path, and their school of thought, which continues even today, right? And all these three, if you see, it's something amazing. Each of these three, if you actually try to go deeply into any of their mathas, right? Of course, I'm not talking so much about the Mayavad part. Let's leave that part aside. But Advaita has many things to offer. Everything that Advaita says is not, quote unquote Mayavad, correct? So, like I'm doing a course on Vedanta Sutra by one Vishistadvaita, that is Ramanuja teacher. So there, when I'm learning the Vedanta Sutra, which is Vaishnava interpretation, obviously, 80% of what Shankaracharya says, that is accepted. 80% of what Shankaracharya says in Gita, in Vedanta Sutra, is accepted by the other acharyas. They are not contradicting everything that he says. But in some points, they will have a problem. So Advaita in general is a system which is much older. Right? It's always there. Uh, you know, so these three mathas, if you actually look into their teachings, right, it's very amazing. Their teachings, the way, and see, the amazing thing is all three acharyas, Shankaracharya, Ramanuja, Madhva, correct? All three of them had the same lifestyle. Right? If somebody would see what their lifestyle is, how they led their life, what they ate, how they slept, what kind of by and large, even a lot of their sadhana was also very similar only. So that's how it was. Like you couldn't differentiate. You couldn't say that they had a very different, way in which they interacted with the material world. Correct? Whether it's interacting with women, interacting with anything, eating, sleeping, all those aspects, it was all just the same. Correct? Their scholarship, and all three of them in their own sampradayas, they basically say that they show their uh, interpretation of Vedanta Sutra, their Vedanta Sutra Bhashya to Vyasadeva. And Vyasadeva incidentally accepts all of them. Vyasadeva says that to all of them, he says that yes, this is also one way in which you can see my teachings. So basically, Satya is one, but it has so many ways in which it can be seen. Right? It's like that. So let's go a little bit into these three mathas, and that's the last part what we will do today. And we will also see how Lord Chaitanya integrated them in a very special way. So if you see Dvaita, Advaita, Vishishta, Advaita, right? So what does Dvaita say? In Dvaita, Jiva is completely different from Param Jiva is completely different from Parabrahman. In Vishishtadvaita, Jiva is Amsha of Bhagavan and is considered Parinama of Brahma Shakti. And in Advaita, the Brahma has become Vivarta. Vivarta as in it seems to have changed into Jiva. So there is Parinamavad and Vivartavad. Vivarta is like illusion. Parinama is transformation. Ramanuja's theory is the theory of transformation. Shankara's theory is the theory of illusion. Yeah? So the Brahma has become illusioned, and thus the Jiva has come about. So like that he talks about. And again, if you see connection with Parabrahma, like the Advaita say, the Dvaita says Jiva is Saguna, full of qualities, etc. Hari is Sarvottama, the supreme. In Vishistadvaita, Narayana is Sarva Antaryami. See, Vishistadvaita has a very interesting way in which they describe. In Vishistadvaita, the Sharira is there, the body. In the body, there is Jivatma. And in the heart of the Jivatma, there is Paramatma. So they actually see the Jivatma as the body of Paramatma. See, just like our body, this body which is there is the body for the Atma, right? And inside the Atma, in the heart of the Atma, there is Paramatma. So for the Paramatma, the Jiva becomes like a body. So see, this is philosophy, and they have a lot of pramanas for whatever they say. But the way they take it ahead, see, as I told you in the beginning, right? Philosophy is not just to talk something without action. In Vishistadvaita, they basically see ourselves, they see the Vaishnava, our devotee as a bhara, as a property of the Lord. Just like the body is the property of the soul itself they see as a property of Narayana. And basically, and that's how their whole system of sadhana also is. As in, they say that we are just someone who is property of his, and we have to just be his unalloyed servants in his service. And whenever he wants, he will take us back to him. Correct? It is up to him completely. We are his property. He has to take his property back to him. So like that. So I mean, I'm being very very brief over here, but each of these concepts they go very very deep. In Advaita, of course, the jiva is nirguna. Primarily they see it like that. Okay. In Dvaita, they see the jiva as the sevaka of Hari, as a servant. Okay. In Vishishta Dvaita, jiva is Ishwara Shesha. See, there is a difference between these two. Huh? In one, it is sevaka in Dvaita, and here it is Ishwara Shesha. Ishwara Shesha means like Lakshman. Okay. So there is one sentence in the Ramayana, which is a very interesting sentence, and in that sentence you can see both Dvaita and Vishishta Dvaita. So when Lakshman meets Hanumanji, this comes in the Kishindakan, no, in the Vanaparva, when Lakshman meets Hanumanji and he introduces, he says, I am servant of Ram, Lakshman says, but he has accepted me as his brother. Like that. It's a beautiful sentence. I'm repeating it again. Lakshman tells Hanumanji, I am servant of Lord Ram, but it is his greatness that he has accepted me as his brother. So in this one line, you can see Dvaita and Vishishta Dvaita. The first line which is there now, I am servant of Ram, that is Dvaita. But he has accepted me as his brother, that is Vishishta Dvaita. That means in Vishishta Dvaita, they give a lot of importance to that relationship which the Jiva has with the Lord. They say that because the Jiva is his property, the Lord uses his property in a particular relationship with him. He will have some property as his brother, some as some friend, whatever, right? Gopa, Gopi, this, that, like that. So that's how they say it. Right? So that is Vishishta Dvaita. And now see, Advaita, if you see that also, Advaita also, if you see now, it's an amazing description. Right? They say that by serving the Lord for a long time, there is oneness in Brahma Chaitanya. So we give an example, like suppose somebody is eating nice food, there is no difference between the person enjoying, the object of enjoyment, and the process of enjoyment. This is Advaita. Correct? Like someone is sitting and eating a good meal, the person, the act of eating, and the food, they all become one in a sense that that whole experience, it is just one thing, right? It's not, you cannot distinguish it so much that the person is different from the pleasure he is getting. It all just merges up. So they emphasize on that, that experience. So moksha, in Dvaita, moksha is Vishnu Samipya. That means you can go close to him. In Vishishta Dvaita, it is Vishnu Bhoga Samya. You become an enjoyable object of Vishnu. They emphasize on that, the relationship. In Advaita, the identity of me being as Atma is gone. It is Brahma Ekatva. So the identity is destroyed over there in their perspective, Advaita. The sadhana for Dvaita is bhakti. The sadhana for vishistadvaita is jnana paripakva kendrit bhakti. It's bhakti, but centered around this understanding, which is very important for them. And in Advaita, it is basically primarily jnana kendra, like where you absorb in such a way that you forget who you are. So that is the emphasis which they have. Okay, I'm being very brief over here, but if you see the Vedanta Sutra, the explanations which all these three acharyas have given, whether it is Ramanuja, Madhva, or Shankara, it's very, very amazing and deep. It's like each of them have taken all the statements of the Upanishads and they have substantiated how the Upanishadic statements corroborate what they are saying. Like that they have done. Right? And Mahaprabhu has integrated all of them by calling it Achintya Veda Veda. Right? And in that, this Achintya is a very important word. Because see, there is Veda and there is Abeda. See, now what happens now is devotees, many of times, we emphasize more on the Veda, the difference. But Mahaprabhu spoke about Abeda also. Abeda means non-difference. Mahaprabhu did not say it is only Veda. He said it is Abeda also. There is a non-difference as well. That also Mahaprabhu touches in his title of Achintya Veda Veda. And Achintya is added because it cannot be explained. So an author says you cannot explain it so easily. Right? You have to experience it. Just like Yama tells Nachiketa. When Nachiketa asks a lot of questions about spiritual world, Yama at one point he says, I can't tell you. Words have a capacity in how much they can explain. After one point, words stop. शब्दों से आप कितना कह सकते हो एक समय के बाद आप कुछ बोल ही नहीं सकते right so Yama says that you have to experience it baba you can't ask so much about everything so just like we also like Prabhupada also would say a mother prasava vedana a mother what she experiences in pregnancy and the pain she experiences in labor and the love she experiences for her child she can explain that to another lady or another man who doesn't have a child or has not gone through that process, but no one can understand that. It's an experience you have to go through. Correct. So that's why that achintya is added. That achintya is added because one has to experience the Veda and Abheda. Without experiencing Veda and Abheda, it is going to be very difficult for us to understand what is being said. Correct. And it will always remain achintya only. It will remain inconceivable. Correct, like that. So that's how you understand the word achintya. Achintya means it is going to be it is inexplainable to a person who has not experienced it. But somebody who has experienced can only understand what is Veda and Abheda. Okay, so like this. So this is very. I mean, it's very significant actually that because words, as I said, it's the experience is very important. That's why even as a preacher, like there was this famous devotee Rasraj Prabhu. He once said that sometimes people say just repeat what Srila Prabhupada said, but he said how can you repeat? Those words are Prabhupada's words, right? That comes with his experience. It's not that easy to repeat anyone else's words, right? It may not carry the same depth. It is like Bhimsen Joshi, right? He sings one particular song. Maji, Mahera Pandari, he sings. Bhimsen Joshi. I'm sure most of you must have heard. Beautifully he sings. So we may all know the lyrics and we may also try to sing in the same raga if we have some understanding of music. But then how can it compare to what Bhimsen Joshi sang? Right? Because his experience, his own knowledge, his own realization of that raga and those words are much more deeper than what somebody else could. So similarly, like Prabhupada speaks one lecture, not easy. We can hear it. There are many lectures of great persons if you see. We can hear those lectures, but to repeat it as it is very difficult. One must have realization at least to some level of what one is speaking. Otherwise, it's very difficult. You can't simply repeat like that. Correct? It becomes very, very external. Right? So the last part with which I would like to end is basically that philosophy, coming back to where we started from, right? Philosophy expressed by the human mind is something amazing. Whether it is Western philosophers or Indian philosophers, darshanik. Actually, in India, we don't call them philosophers, but darshanik. They have expressed very complex ideas in wonderful ways. But the difference is Western philosophers, many of them didn't have sadhana, they didn't have samskar. So unfortunately, many of them went completely off track in their personal life. They spoke some things which were perfect, making sense. And we can appreciate that from the Gita's perspective. Paurusham Virushu, that any man or woman in the world, when they do something wonderful, we have to understand that Krishna Shakti is there. Like that person may not know Krishna, but Krishna is certainly acting through everybody in this world, right? Like whether it is a lion or whether it is any human being or anyone, if they are exhibiting some amazing power, then that is coming from God and that's worth appreciating. That's what a devotee is. So we started today by talking about, I started talking about many things that Medzig or Plato or many of these people said, which are perfect from Sanatana Dharma, Mahabharata, psychology. I started from that and then later I went into the three major Mata in India, Mata Traya Acharya, right? How these three also, they're each of them are very deep and even today, their followers are also very deep and they are if you actually see the love also they have for each other, the relationships. I was very fortunate in some time back I heard from one sannyasi, he's a Sri Vaishnava sannyasi. Currently he's present, currently he's in Chennai. He must be around 70 or something. In his younger days, his father put him in a patshala which was run by the Kanchi Shankaracharya. Okay? The Shankaracharya, there was two generations back, there was a Shankaracharya in Kanchi. He was called as Chandrasekhar Saraswati, Pramacharya, that was his title. So in his school, the Sri Vaishnava was studying, grammar and everything, Vedas. He was studying there. But they had such a beautiful relationship, right? Just try to imagine this. It's a school which is run by the Shankaracharya of Kanchi, but there is a student who is a Sri Vaishnava. He has come to study, but what he has come to study, he has not come to study Vedanta. He has come to study Sanskrit and Veda, correct? So he stays there for 18 years and they have such a sweet relationship, right? I mean, I heard that, which I don't want to repeat, but it's very amazing to see the kind of relation they shared, where there was such a mutual love and respect. And eventually, this student, Sri Vaishnava, who studied under him, he himself became a sannyasi and he is now leading a large group of disciples and mathas, etc. Right? This goes to show that in the Indian system, these philosophers who were there, they were very deeply rooted in their own samskara. They knew each other's philosophy. They had a lot of respect mutual for each other as well. And each of their philosophies also, if you see, even though obviously there are some contradictions, especially between the Advaita and the vishistadvaita Dvaita, because of the impersonalism part. But as I said, everything that Advaita says is not completely rejectable. Shankaracharya, also many things he spoke about were perfect in terms of the philosophical way in which it was explained. So there are points of contradiction, but not that everything was completely rejected. But the more important thing is the samskaras, the lifestyle that these people had, and the depth they had in their own sadhana, their own spiritual growth and strength. Right? With that, I'll stop. Any questions? Anyone? Raise a hand. There's no question.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. Yeah.
Dandos, Prabhuji. Prabhuji, you mentioned regarding Krishna being the ability in a man, and somehow uh, even those personalities like the Pandavas who really had that ability, even they needed to be pushed through. And when they were unwilling to really explore that talent or utilize that talent to achieve those great heights. So, in our own personal life, when we discover certain skill or when we hone certain skill by the grace of God at certain stage in our career, and which we realize that if it can be utilized properly, it can help us stabilize our life or help in securing our Krishna consciousness for us and our family. But at the same time, we are careful that we don't want to be driven too much into the mire of material advancement, where that skill itself becomes our all in all and devotional service takes a backtrack. So, how do we understand where to put that skill and how much to utilize that for advancement?
Yeah, good question. See, if you see the Gita, right? If you see the Mahabharata in general, the Pandavas, like if you see Arjuna is called, he doesn't sleep at night. No? That's a Gudakesh.
Good,
At night also he's practicing. Correct. So I always say that suppose if a student nowadays says that whole night I want to sit and study, it is something like what Arjuna did actually. Because Arjuna was also not sleeping at night. He was working hard, to practice his archery. Correct. It's not that, see, even though these people were talented, it's not that by only talent they achieved success. Like just like modern people, if you see all these Sachin Tendulkar, Virat Kohli kind of people, they have talent, but they work very hard as well. Otherwise, they don't get success. Right. See, now in spiritual circles, sometimes we are overly afraid of material world, thinking that, and maybe it has its own background. So we are too afraid that we may get caught up and so on. But if you see the Gita as a psychology, the Gita encourages one to go ahead in one's ability and in one's line of action. Right, that's what karma yoga is. So I think of course there has to be a balance. So that's why Krishna speaks about yukta hara, yukta vihara also. That means one should sleep at right time. One should have time for everything. I mean, I'm not saying that we need to be like that L&T chairman recently said, no, work 90 hours or
70.
like
Yes.
Narayan Murthy said 70 hours or whatever. So we are not advocating like that also. But at the same time, to neglect one's own ability and not fulfill it is self-defeating, at least from the Gita perspective. Right?
Yes, bro. Thank you, bro. Hare Krishna.
Yeah. Rajendra, go ahead.
Me?
Yeah, you're audible.
So yeah, you gave a lot of comparison between Advait, vishistadvaita, and the third. I mean, can you put it in a table format just to know, the differences? Because you said all this, but it doesn't get registered in our head. Table format would help.
Put in a table and post. I'll do that later.
Okay, thank you, bro.
Yeah, last. Saragre, bro.
Hare Krishna, Bhavi. Prabhuji, like you mentioned about like different philosophies. I mean, everybody in the following those philosophies, right? I mean, they follow it because they consider it the highest philosophy. Otherwise, I mean, they cannot follow it. I mean, if somebody is following vishistadvaita, they think that it's the highest philosophy, or like we do that Krishna consciousness is the highest philosophy. But I mean, in case I mean, like it happens in like that we may encounter some time in our life where I mean, like we may say that okay, there is something else which is still more higher. It may happen. I mean, even in Krishna consciousness itself, where our initial understanding was different, but eventually we understand some things which are higher than what we thought some years back. So, Prabhuji, I mean, like you mentioned about how they reconciled, like Prakashan and Saraswati, like they followed their path, and then probably they might have slowly incorporated whatever they had learned eventually. So, Prabhuji, what you think? I mean, should be a good understanding.
Nothing like, one philosophy only being this concept, this is highest. This doesn't actually go well with the Vedic thinking in general. Satya is always seen as multidimensional. You can see Satya in various ways. Are you leave everything else? Even in Vrindavan, can you say that Radharani is the only gopi who is the highest? We say that, correct? Now, if
Right.
you see, there is Chandravali, correct? If you see in Vrindavan only, there is Radharani, there is Chandravali. Chandravali's group is completely different. They will have their own set of followers, right? For them, who is the highest gopi, if you ask? It is Chandravali. If you ask the Sri Vaishnavas, they have a gopi named Nappindai. They talk about her. Andal talks about Nappindai in her writing as a very favorite gopi of Krishna. She is the daughter of, she is Krishna's mama's daughter, like that, in relationship. Okay. So they give a lot of importance and description to Nappindai. So my point is, this whole concept of highest, greatest, these are all very relative in a way. One cannot see in your own line that may be the highest, right? But in another line of teaching, what they are saying, that will only, you cannot, you meet a Sri Vaishnava or someone else or some other group, you cannot tell that what you are following is not the highest. Mahaprabhu came last and what he spoke, that only is the highest. No, he's not going to accept it, and even to prove it also will be extremely difficult and almost impossible. You see, each of the sampradaya, their writings, they are as detailed as anything. In nominal amount of work, each sampradaya has done. Okay, one thing is the Advaita and the Vaishnava, but in Vaishnava also there are so many Vaishnava sects, right? Vaishnava is not one. Like Madhvacharya is completely different, and Ramanuja is different, and there are so many others also. Even in Gaudiya, there are so many offshoots and so many. It's not just, and what to speak of this Nimbarka and other sampradayas. So each of these sampradayas have a lot of shastric basis in whatever they say and everything. So I don't, this highest business, let's not get too much into it. Highest is honestly, it's a very personal perspective. You cannot, one cannot go to all others and say that you all are following inferior philosophy, ours only is the highest. No, they will, they have competent people to debate as well to say that, come on, how can you say that? Right? If you go to Sri Vaishnava and talk to them, their interpretation of, how the Paramatma is within the Atma and how Sharanagati has to be done. They'll have so much of Shastric basis for it. You cannot beat them only in argument.
Yeah.
So my point is, everybody will be happy in their philosophy. That much I can say. If you practice it. See, it's not just, these philosophies are not just philosophies which are for word jugglery or just externally debate. It's about practicing also. If you practice it, then you are very much in tune with whatever is being said. Correct? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Sure, Prabhu. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Gaur Bhakta Vrindi ki jai.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare